Welcome everyone to the Mastermind Book Club. Tonight we're going over one of three parts to the book that was written by Ray Dalio. The book is called Principles, Life and Work. Let's talk. What important lessons have the members who are listening here and can respond learned from this book? What's very important to you? What are one or two things? Does any one of you want to go first? Doesn't matter. I'm going to call on all of you.
Okay, I'll start it off. Pretty much, I enjoyed what I listened to, even though the robotic reader was a little bit hard at times.
Yes, correct. I agree. I
I
agree.
really didn't know who Ray Dalio was, or I knew who he was, but I hadn't thought of him. I had no reason to think of who he was. But I was telling Reg before the call that he's a 72-year-old billionaire worth between 14 and 20 billion dollars from New York, Jackson Heights, New York. He runs Bridgewater Associates. And in 2012, it was estimated that that hedge fund was the largest hedge fund in the world with over 150 billion in assets. They had some trouble with the leadership, so I think it has since dropped. This guy, Ray Dalio, even though he is a multi-billionaire, one of the things that he was stressing in the book was that everyone is going to go through the struggles, but you might as well have goals and uh, I guess things you're shooting for that your struggles will be worth it. He said it doesn't matter if you on a low level, a middle level, a high level, you're still going to have the struggles. He said the best thing about going through the struggles, this guy's a hedge fund guy, stocks and bonds since the age of 12 that he was into. Um, he says one thing that I like. He says principle gives others a better understanding of who you are, and what you stand for. Principles give you a definition of purpose and situation. So he has these principles, even though I listened to the story as Reg was telling me, and I got a lot out of his life story. But I really didn't get but one or two principles. And let's see, which was the principle? Okay, he says principles can be explained. Uh, he said he wish he had he wish he knew the principled thoughts that Winston Churchill had, the clarity of understanding Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Steve Jobs, principles, that you can explain some of the principle. He says undefined principle, opposites, uh, undefined principles, opposing principles, religious principles, principles of law, principles of friendship, principles that we get from our parents. Principles gives other a better understanding of who you are, what you stand for, your definition of purpose. Principles are gained through our own experiences. This is what I want to get to. Principles are gained through our own experiences. Sometimes we accept them in the form of other people, our parents, our religious, or through just failures. Think of yourself. Decide with humanities what you want to do, what's true to you. Why are you? Why should you do it? What are you looking to achieve from it? Uh, People who share value and principles will always people who share the same values and principles will all get along. So he was talking about, as you defined it, look for the people who same share the same type uh, of I guess camaraderie. He said you can build relationships through your principles. Let's see what else is good. Choices reflect our principles. You must walk the walk to talk the talk. That was something I got out of the book that my mother used to say. That was one of her favorite sayings, you know. But she was talking about it in a form of religion. She was like, don't talk the talk unless you walk the walk. Like
Mm,
your life should be fruit. of what you're talking about. And that's what I got from him saying about the principles. He also talked about imagination and meditation, how you see the thing before you achieve the thing, how you walk through the struggles to get there. Um, he said, always reflect on your mistakes. He says, use principles to change and improve. Strive for a lot. He says, strive for a lot and you will fail a lot. Use the principles to avoid your failures next time, and then make mistakes again. He says, through sound principles, you'll never let yourself get knocked out of the game. So these were some of the things that I got from the book. I got a lot more, and hopefully I can chime in as we go along.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Charles, for sharing. Very important to note that there are many principles in here. Some of them are life, some of them work, and some of them are intertwined. Right? Who wants to go next? Who else learned a thing or two about this very important first part, 1/3 of this book?
Right. Sorry. I can go next.
Martha, yes.
Hey, Martha.
Welcome.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Good
Oh,
evening.
beautiful hearts. Yes, yes. I love you're calling us from somewhere where it's nice and warm and sunny.
Yeah.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Martha. What did you pick up from this book? What
About Ray Dalio from the Principles book, and he's created the Bridgewater Association in 1975. He say life is a game, and we have a lot of problems and failure. And life became a puzzle. You had to solve the puzzle to and go to a principles to create what goals. And then they say pain plus reflection equal progress. That's what he said in his book. And
say that again? Say that again.
Pain plus reflection equal progress.
Yes, I'm going to be reviewing that on another level, but it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, pain reflection plus reflection equal progress.
Yes.
Sometimes we're pain. Sometimes we have to leave somebody we love very much to get our goals in life, and the pain create our principles in life. One of the first part of the principle is be radical open mind. That means we think how weak I am, what problems I have, how to solve my puzzles. You ask question what I'm missing, where I can get honest and feedback. And we have to be transparent. We have to be truthful to get what you want. And we have to be, he say, open mind, equal mindset, equal help to reach what goals. That's what he say. And the second one principle that he was talking about is find the root cause. Find the root cause is the weakness we have to address what principal system, to address what weakness. And he said weakness, if we address what weakness equal strength, get stronger. That's what he said. And the third part is write your principle. You have to have a piece of paper and write the principles you mean, consistency, be clear what you want, be clear with your goals, write everything down, solve your problems, make decisions, overcome your setbacks. He's talking about that. He's talking about we have to have a great character. We have to be great, fair, equally, impartial, and reasonable. He's talking about that. And the pain is a reflection that we have in life. We have to change it to find our goals. Let's see. The best decision is courage to act. It's another thing he was talking about in the book. He says something came my mind. He said, you not pay the person for the job, for the job. You pay the person for the person it is, the quality of the person it is, the truthful, the patient, the person it is, the transparent, the person it is. So you not pay he doesn't pay his people for the job. He pay his people for for the transparency they have in the job, the courage and the decision to act. That's what he said. That one, it was very, again, my attention, because it's fair, it's fair to pay get paid in the job for the kind of person you are, and only for your knowledge. And he talked about the ideas of the Bridgewater. The Bridgewater is the idea to meritocracy. Meritocracy is the idea he have in the book. It's a political system with economic goods and political power. That's what one of the experts, he was talking about his idea in the book, the meritocracy. And that's what, again, the 3 parts of the book.
Very good.
To be
Very
continued.
good. Yes. Just so you know, a meritocracy is a system in which advancement is based on individual ability or achievement. Individual ability or achievement, that's what advancement is based on.
Political system. Oh, meritocracy.
Yes.
Can you repeat one more time? Because I write a political system with economic goods and political power.
Hold on a second.
Individual people
It's
on the basis of the talent, effort, and achievement.
a system in which advancement, that you should be able to see it there on the screen.
A system
See
with
it there?
advancement based individual ability and achievement through leaders. Select and
Got it.
ability.
Okay. All right. So thank you for sharing, Martha. Let me just stop sharing the screen here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Gina or Reg?
Progress.
Whoops, you're muted, Gina. Take unmute. Yes.
All right.
Gina.
Reg, would you like to go first?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. So I found this book to be very fascinating, just like I have found a lot of books to be fascinating that we have been reading in the book club lately.
That's right.
So I understand that this book is divided in 3 sections, okay? One is called Where I'm Coming From, the other one is Life Principles, and the third part of it is Work Principles. And what I have down here, where I'm coming from is sort of like an autobiography, right, about his life. I was hoping that he went into a little bit more detail on his life. I know he was trying to protect the privacy of different people, but I thought that he had some very deep stories that I think that he could have relayed. It was nice that he shared some of that with us. But I hope that he had went a little bit more into details. I don't know if any of you felt like that while you were listening, to like, tell me some more, okay? And then a life principle, that's about how to live a meaningful life, and simplifying it by breaking it down into 5 key points. And then the next part was, work principles. So I think we're going to go into those in progression, right? Today, what are we dealing with? Pretty much the autobiography, because I know that we were supposed to read like the first five hours, or listen to the first 5 hours of this, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And one of the things that I should say that, and I want to quote this on here, it said, imagine that in order to have a great life, you have to cross a dangerous jungle. Did you guys hear that part?
Yep.
Yes. And you can stay safe where you are at the moment, or and have an ordinary life, or you can risk crossing the jungle to have a terrific life. All right. How would each of us approach this? He said, what choice would we make? To take some time to think about this, because it's the type of choice that we all have to take, whether to be risky, or just decide to, okay, never mind, I'm not going to cross the jungle. I'm wondering about what's over there, but it feels comfortable over here. What if I encounter a monster or something on the other side? And so I also understand one of the things that they say that when we're like on our deathbed, people usually say, oh, I regret not
Yes,
doing this. It's never
that's
like,
right.
I regret doing that, but it's like, I regret not doing this. So I thought, what would be our regrets? We want to stick to the ordinary life, or should we jump into the jungle and try to find an extraordinary life?
Well, this is
So
part
that
of the
was
jungle right here. We are part of the jungle. I mean,
okay.
how many people like to do this? What we're doing? Very few.
Yeah,
Very
true.
few. So what you're saying is a reality. I mean, we are in the jungle.
Yeah.
We're reading really good books, and we're sticking to pretty much some specific topics, but we take a tangent once in a while, and we'll go into certain things, but they're all pretty much on building ourselves, on self-help, on and a few other establishments that correlate to our own well-being and finances and relationships and sales and so on, and marketing. So we're hitting a jungle. So you hit it right on the nail. Yes, we're in the jungle. Thank you,
That's a
Gina,
good
for that.
point.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. And one more thing, I was thinking that one of the things that I wrote down, and he said, what was it? I just want to be right. I don't care if the answer doesn't come from me. It can come from anybody else. So
Yes.
he was willing to like explore other ideas in order to get what he wanted. And sometimes I would hear people at work saying, oh, this person didn't give me credit for this, but I was the one who came up with this idea. And
Yes.
so Ray is not afraid to be able to find somebody who's smarter than him, who can answer the questions that he might have, and he doesn't care exactly where those answers might come from. So he is, willing to go out there and ask different people of their opinion, and then use it for his own advantage. There was one more thing I wanted to say on here, but anyway, what was this? To do exceptionally well, you have to push your limits. You will crash, but you will get up unless you give up. So it's important for us to test our limits, on a daily basis. And yes, we're going to get knocked down, but we don't lose until we decide to not get back up. Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Gina. That's true. We're gonna get knocked down many times, and just know that you can cry, you can pout, you can whatever you can do, but you've got to get back up. I mean, I went through an episode this past August where I just felt I was doing too much, and then after I just realized and started feeling down, all of a sudden, I needed this. I needed to do this, and now I feel better. Now I feel much better, because if you don't feel down, you don't know what you're missing on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. Reg,
Yes, sir.
are you regicated me?
All day, every day.
All right. Let's get it here in the mastermind. Get regicated.
I will start with what was the end, or not necessarily the end, but the whole succession plan, right? Like, what are you going to leave behind, and how are you going to put something in place that's going to allow what you put in place to continue on, and knowing when to do that. I thought that was a very important thing that he demonstrated and showed, because a lot of times people who create
something so big. In this case, he created this business. And Bridgewater Capital at one point was the biggest hedge fund in the world, but still pretty prominent and major hedge fund. And he said, let's put something in place that will make sure that this thing goes on and probably ideal into perpetuity. The idea of most companies or whatever is usually to have them go on until everyone dies and then some. So his understanding that, I have X amount of years to do this thing at a certain level, and also I want to pursue some other things, as he started to want to go down the path of philanthropy and some other interests that he had. And he said, let's get this thing in place, knowing that it would necessarily take a couple years or 5 years, whatever, or something to that effect. And it ultimately even took more, because I guess whatever he did as leading the company, he cemented himself so much in there. He didn't really have a board, or not a board, but like he didn't really have people like the best checks and balances in place. So what he thought was going to take the amount of time it took to actually go to move on to the next person, they struggled. But just the fact that he had enough of being able to let his ego go a little bit, lessen the ego, to be able to put that into place, to say that we need something to make sure that this thing goes on, very important, very, very, very solid, right? And so you have that as a thing that we can learn from, because maybe we don't all build a life in that way in terms of a business, but just knowing when to step down and allow other people to step in and take the helm, it shows a level of maturity. It shows a level of being able to tame your ego, so that you don't have your ego override and rule every aspect of life and such, because your ego will basically move your side and take over, because the ego never wants to be put to rest. It wants to always lead. So he showed that level of maturity and that level of understanding to make sure that he had that in place. And so other things that I thought were important were, just the fact of how, even from the get-go, when he was about not necessarily following the system. So sometimes you think it's all about following the system, and I'm not anti the system, but he chose to kind of like go against the system to a degree, right? And he found things that were of interest to him. So we can follow that path of, like, in school, he kind of customized, created his own space of where he wanted to do only things he wanted to do, and then led him to being able to do well in the interest that he had. Ultimately, in college, he did well enough that he was able to get into Harvard Business School, right? But he kind of formulated a plan for himself, because initially he didn't really have that interest in school, but he found things that he was interested in that allowed him to do well in, right? So then following that path, which then allowed him to go and do his thing, go to Harvard Business School, get a good degree, so on and so forth, and eventually led him to even doing things with respect to, whereas many people who came out of Harvard didn't go the route of commodities. He went into commodities. There was no one doing that. They were all, again, following the convention. So he kind of bucked that trend, did something different, went into commodities. Then he went into this business, I think it was Dominic and Dominic, whatever, where he was put in a position to lead the commodities division, to kind of create some big commodities desk or whatever, this sort of thing. But he was over his head. Ultimately, the business fell, but he learned from that. He knew he was over his head. So this type of thing, where you go into things maybe not necessarily being fully equipped, right? Sometimes it's a positive. Sometimes you can learn from that. Sometimes it's a negative or whatever. You might get crushed. But he at least was one to at least take the challenge on, right? And even as he went into his business, ultimately he did what he did, was just to trade in different types of securities and such. His goal was like, okay, I'm about risk and I'm about reward, but I can also get more reward with less risk. So he was able to formulate a plan for that, the paradigm that he would be able to get more reward with less risk, because there was always a sort of perception that you needed to risk more to get more, but he was able to show that that wasn't necessarily the case. So he had his ups and downs along the way, but he learned a lot. He learned a lot. He was able to cultivate and create his own space and create his own paradigm and create his own model for what he thought trading should be like or whatever. And it was very successful. So even when you had the crash of like the Black Monday in 1987, companies were on average down 10 some percent, like 30 some percent. He was up like 14%, I think, at least in one of his funds. So those types of things where he was able to demonstrate a knowledge and awareness that allowed him to gain, whereas other people were failing, put him on a map to put him in a position of being able to catch the eyes of people who were institutions and entities that have money that he could then bring their money into his possession. So that from the beginning, when he first got his first round of money was from the World Bank, which is a very big organization. He went from getting initial 5 million to, by the time he was and that was in the early or so 80s, I believe, until about the mid 95, he was at 4 billion in assets. So that's a major amount of growth in that shorter period of time, right? So just in terms of doing things in a very astute way, being very on top of his game, examining things the way that they should. Supposedly, I guess he said, having this sort of meritocracy and allowing people to have a word, to have a say, even to the point where in the beginning, he would even, and maybe not just in the beginning, because it even happened in the 90s. I know when he brought one of these guys on who was an intern, and he ultimately reached to a higher level in the organization, but he was allowing even newer people, like young people, to come in and have a try at things. He realized that was good to that, because he realized that young people had a lot of innovation, a lot of ideas, whatever the sort of thing. So he was willing to give them a chance, because when he started the company, he was young, and he realized, I was young and I did this thing, so why don't we give other people a chance? So he allowed that to be a part of his, what he instituted into his company, just as much as he realized having people who had experience was important too. So he was able to kind of strike a balance with that, right? Sometimes, you give people a chance just as much as, you will put somebody in a position that knew what they were doing, because you got to make sure, you don't do things too stupidly or whatever that could, cause your organization to go bottom up. Interesting other points that he said was that it was not any more difficult growing a company when it got bigger than it was small when it was smaller, because when it was small, it was just him doing everything. So that was a lot. I have to manage and do balance all these things out. So that was just me. Then he went to a couple people, 5, whatever. It's no different from going from 5 to 60 than it was from going from 60 to the hundreds. So that was a very interesting point, because you're thinking like, oh, more people to manage, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a different set of conditions, a different set of difficulties or what have you, that, he was able to take it in stride, and, sort of like, okay, well, this is the situation I'm in, and I'll deal with it accordingly. And then Gina brought up the point, which I thought was very solid about, what was it? Oh my goodness, she just brought up the point about him where he said, I forgot now. What was that last point she said? About, oh my goodness.
Is that about crossing into the jungle?
No, the last thing you said. That was going to bring that one up too. I don't know if I was going to bring that up, but it wasn't the crossing into the jungle. It's another one that you said. The last thing you said about,
Like to do exceptionally well, you have to push the limits.
no, not that one.
You crash, but if you can continue, then you will first. I mean, if you persevere, then as long as you don't give up, you won't fail.
No, not that one.
I just want to be right. I don't care where the answer
Yeah,
comes
that
from.
one.
Is that it?
Yeah, that one. So that point of like, he didn't care about if it was his answer, but just the fact that he would bring the right people into the mix and basically would have them examine his viewpoints, and he wanted to examine their viewpoints. And he said, ultimately, by us examining each other, cross-examining or what have you, that, maybe I have a certain level, a certain knowledge, a certain awareness. They have a certain level, certain knowledge, a certain awareness. But if we brought ourselves together, we can get to a higher, like a more right a more right ending. And I thought that was solid, because that shows a level of humility, and that I don't again allow my ego to rule me, and that I will put myself in a position to win, even if it's not coming from me. If I have to take somebody else's information or their analysis. But I think about how it's kind of good, and it's not the exact thing, how like if you have a certain point that you argue, you should almost be able to argue another person's point just as well, even if it's not your point. And that shows like he was talking about being open-minded or whatever, that level of open-mindedness, because that's going to get you much further along. Whereas if you just close and you say it's just my way, it's just my way, right? There's no way any one of us can be 100% right on everything. But if you're open, even if you don't agree with someone, there's a point where you can find a balance there that you can gain from that. So I thought that was very important, and it shows a level of again, maturity, that sort of thing, that he has that type of understanding and awareness. But I mean, he demonstrated that throughout, and then even things like along the way, which I thought was good, just in terms of his travels and his experience, that he talked about things where he said, things about color and race and things like that. It wasn't about that, right? It was more about the person and what they brought to the table, whatever. And it wasn't those types of things. And just in terms of when his son was in China, his son was in China, he went to school there, he didn't know the language, but he learned things there with respect to how people would treat each other. And he didn't, he had to kind of navigate that ultimately to the point where he really loved China. He started a charity there, right? And he kept that charity going for a bunch of years, right? And so that sort of thing, but just understanding those types of things. And even Ray Dalio was saying this thing about where it relates to like money. He was like I wouldn't trade my life over, but it's like it's not about the money. It was more about obviously doing what you love and the value add and how many people you could help. And he even talked about helping people and seeing things as like unequal and with just disproportionate amount of people like being in lesser situations, and him seeing a fortunate life that he's had, but he understood that. So it wasn't about the money, just as much as it was more about the experience and gaining stuff from the life that you had and being able to do what you want and all that. And he's happy about that. But he was talking about, I guess you don't get them, they don't necessarily get that much more from that much more money. Just as much you can be like poor or not have as much money and still be okay. Right. So it's not about that, but it's more about what you're gaining from your life just by having like the right relationships. Because relationships, for example, he said were very important. Like a relationship, he said, was more valuable than money. Right. So that's a major thing. Like he wouldn't trade that relationship for money. And he affords some good relationships along the way. So those are some of the points. I mean, there's definitely some more as I can give, but just those very important things: the bowing of the ego, the not necessarily needing to be right, and knowing that if I bring other people's opinion into the mix and I'm open, that we can get to a better, a higher state of right. The fact that money wasn't all about money, but it was about the life of experience and relationships, and basically being able to do something you love and cultivating your own type of life around those things that you love, as opposed to just doing something just for the hell of it, and just being able to put yourself in a position to win, and also having a plan of succession so that when you're done, whatever you leave behind, someone can take it on and bring it to the next level. And he talked about that because with a succession plan, the position you leave should be such that whoever's in position could do just as well, not better. And no one person can do better than the next. It's the plan itself that will allow for the thing that you have going to thrive. So that is the winning formula. It's what you put in place that allows what you created to continue to go on in perpetuity at a level that is thriving, as opposed to you just having something that you put together that only you can have it go to a certain level because only you put what you needed to put in and you didn't incorporate and provide and give enough people opportunity to thrive in that situation. So I'll just speak to that, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, I'll go on all night.
Awesome, Reg. That's a lot of very good information. Thank you for sharing. And basically, you shared more into the life part. Am I wrong, or is that?
Yeah, like so. I talked to real quick to Charles about it. Charles will be more of the storyteller, and I'll be like try to extract some of the like nuggets out and just speak on those nuggets. Right? Not to say he doesn't, but he'll like recount the story, and I'll say like he spoke to this, and this was the situation, and if you look at it from this way, this is what that type of
very
thing.
good.
I tend to do a lot of that. Just look for those golden nuggets and then impart them.
Well, whatever you did in reference to what I was listening to before what you just mentioned, it was perfect. I mean, it was very concise and I understood everything. I'd say everyone else did as well. So I thank you for sharing all that information. Yes, I've gotten educated. I'm gonna share my screen here very quickly. I'm gonna review 5 or 6 things that are important from the book. Number one, I mean, there's no specific order, is that I learned about Ray Dalio about 5 years ago, so 6 years ago. I heard, the first thing I heard about, I mean, in the order that I was introduced was here, this video, How the Economic Machine Works by Ray Dalio. Has anyone heard of this?
No.
Just write it down, make sure you listen to it.
Maybe
You might not get it on the first try, but I'm certain you will. Reggie, you've got to have heard of this.
I believe I might have, yes.
Okay, and there's a like a TEDx where Ray Dalio goes and he talks about this. It's like an hour long, or maybe it's not TEDx, it's something else. But look for that one, which is more explanation of what he says in here. And you might listen to this a few times if you're interested in finances. If you're not interested, then just move on. But this is where I started to learn about him for the first time.
He did do a TED Talk, one of those interviews on economics, and he's been a frequent guy on CNBC.
He did. Okay. Got it. And then Ray Dalio, in the book, he mentions this. He has been known for the all-weather portfolio. And I learned about this portfolio through Tony Robbins. And I believe that Tony Robbins is the one who I guess, suggested to Ray Dalio about principles, just in general, because he was asked in Tony Robbins' book is, if you were to either die or have to leave water, and you couldn't leave any money to your kids, what are the principles that you would leave to them? And that's where this book came in from that idea. And Tony Robbins was more focused on the money aspect of it, whereas Ray Dalio focused on life and work. All right, so remember the all-weather portfolio. If you're interested in more information in this, I'm giving you here the most brief information in reference to this. I know the whole all-weather portfolio. If I wanted to invest in this format, I could. Again, I'm already invested in it, and it works out pretty well. It's a medium risk, as you can see there on the second sentence. It's a medium risk portfolio, and it can be replicated with 5 ETFs. What are ETFs? You got to look them up. They're not difficult to find what it means. But basically down here you can see it's 30% stocks, 40% fixed income, 7.5% commodities, 15% bonds, and 7.5% commodities of gold. So that's what that is. Did I switch too fast, or should I go back, or good? Now, one of you said that Ray Dalio, what his net worth is. Now, I believe he's worth much more than this. However, this is what is being said on the records. Remember that records never really show real estate. So if he has a $5 million or $1 billion property, I don't know, it's not going to show in here. That's just the reality, because he's willing, if he has 15.6 billion, he's going to give away 50% to his nonprofit organization, through his nonprofit organization. And then the other, what did he say? He wants to leave all his kids and grandkids at least with enough money to have the best health insurance in the world and to have the best education in the world, and a little bit beyond that. Are you all ready to do the same? I'm ready to do the same. I'm just waiting for the money to come in. I got a serious laugh out of you. That was the purpose. Bridgewater. What is Bridgewater? What is it about? Some of you mentioned, 2 of you mentioned how it's gone from being one of the top companies going down. Of course, when a leader leaves and attempts to assign responsibilities to others, there's going to be errors. There's going to be a learning curve, and it might be a year. It might be 10 years. And in this case, Ray Dalio has not completely given up on the company, but he has moved on, and he gets called, I guess, on a consulting basis type. And he's moved on from that. But there's one other piece of information that I want to go over here in reference to this book, and it's in basically the principles of life and work. What are principles? Principles are the fundamental truths that determine how you behave. They reflect your inner character and values. If you need to do that, just take a screenshot before I move on, because I'm not going to read the whole thing. I want to get to this brief and quickly so that I don't lose you. Principles are the fundamental truths that determine how you behave. They reflect your inner character and values. Meaning, one of you, I believe it was Gina, who said, he had a rough childhood, he was a tough kid. And from being a tough kid, all of a sudden to going into investing is amazing. We all have principles. Successful people adopt principles that help them be successful. Ray Dalio's goal is to share the principles that have worked for him throughout his life and contributed to his success. And this is a 5-step process for getting what you want. 5-step process. Set clear goals. Who's written these goals down? I talked to some family members, and I know the family members are the least to listen to any one of us. That's just a reality. However, I still told this person, do you have goals? And he said, no, I just have a vision. I said, well, until you get your clear goals down, you have nothing. Identify problems and don't tolerate them. If you have a problem, an illness, you're in debt, marriage problems, relationship problems, just in general, are you addressing it? Number 3, diagnose the problem to find root causes. How many of us take the time to just sit down and think? Very few of us, very few. Design solutions to get around problems is number 4. And then number 5, do the task required to completion. You take a screenshot. Make sure, because I'm moving on. Going once, going twice. All right, let's get going here. People are usually weak at one or more of these steps. Identify what your weakest steps are, then get better at them, or find someone who can help you compensate for them. Most people will need help, but very few of us will ask for that help. Hold on one second, I gotta get this dog out of here before he chews up my daughter's furniture. Okay. Let's see. All right, back. Sorry, I didn't know he was in here. Hope he didn't chew anything, but I'll know later. This book, I listened to it twice, to that first 4 hours and a half. As Gina said, it's a very powerful book. I didn't pick up everything. I didn't intend to pick up everything. But if you're interested in investing, that all-weather portfolio, I know the formula. I know how to pick what is needed in there. But you can do it on your own as well. You can do it on your own. And that's, as again, medium risk, meaning that you are exposed to some risk, but it's not high risk, and it's not just being complacent with 3 or 4%, which is what most people get if they're invested in the stock market, which is nonsense. Any questions? All right, and let's sign off from the Mastermind Book Club. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's a pleasure to have you all here, and I hope you learned something just like we have. This book is very powerful. We're going to be reviewing part 2 of this book, which is the next 5 hours, up to 10 hours of this book. That's right, 10 hours, because it's a total of almost 15-hour book, almost. Take care, everyone. Thank you for being here.